We have Emily here. She represented Canada on the beach at U21 and U19 Worlds, as well as played indoor at the University of Toronto. So what we're going to be showing here is hip stability. So it's very important when you're jumping, landing, to have control and stability through your hips. So the first basic exercise you can do at home is called the hip bridge, single leg. So she's going to bring her hips up. Now see that she has her arms here, which makes it a little bit more difficult to balance herself. If she wanted to help her balance, she would bring her arms out. Okay, so you bring them in. So what we're looking for is making sure you're driving up using your glutes and your hamstrings. We don't want to be pushing through your back and extending through that. And also you want to make sure your hips are level. If you see dipping, then that can show an indication of weakness or compensation. An exercise you can do as a self-assessment to see if you have the prerequisite to progress to the next level and next exercise is called hip airplanes. So what this works on is hip range of motion and hip stability. So the key is here is you're going to stand on one leg and bend forward as far as you can. Now the key is hinging through the hips. You notice how Emily's back is flat and straight. It's not bent over. Her leg is straight and she has good range of motion. Her arms are to the side to make sure she's balanced as well. Now she's holding that very good. If she got fatigued or she wasn't able to do it, she might be hinging at the hips, going one way or the other way. Her leg might be dipping down and she'll kind of start losing balance. So you really want to focus on using your glutes and hams to hold yourself. And if you can hold this for 10 seconds, you have the prerequisite to go to the next exercise. An exercise that we want all our athletes to be able to do before they get back into competition or start the competition is the single arm snatch. This way they have the power from the glutes and the hips to make sure they can stabilize themselves and create the power in order to jump and handle the loads. So what Emily's going to do here is bend through the hips and then explode through the hips, coming up to the top. This also works on shoulder stability. So the key is the weight is coming up through the force she's generated through the hips. She's not actively bringing it up. Then once up there, we want shoulder stability because of the overhead swinging our athletes are doing, and we have that whole program put together. This is also very specific for the volleyball jump, approach jump, and block jump because she's creating all the momentum from the hamstrings and the glutes. So she's extending through what you would do when you're block jumping or approach jumping. So it's very similar in terms of the approach. Another exercise you can do at home is the block jump. Now, you want to make sure that you pass that prerequisite exercise before self-assessment. If you struggle with that, I wouldn't suggest doing that until coming in and making sure that you can do that exercise. So with the block jump, you're going to make sure that you are pressing above and still landing in the same area where you're jumping from, because you don't want to be coming under the net and you also don't want to jump away from the net. So what Emily's going to do is block, jump, you see the press, the pike, and then step to the side and go back and forth. And what you want to do is make sure that you're jumping and landing in the same area. Her hips are stable, strong, and she's pressing at the top and coming down. So even though it looks like a simple exercise, it challenges your stability and your endurance. Things we want to avoid when we're doing this exercise are things like floating. If you get tired, then you're going to become lazy and not try to get your feet there. So Emily's purposely floating. Also, sometimes you might land on one leg because you're not as stable as you normally would, and then she's losing balance into the wall. And you also might not be pressing at the top. You might just be throwing your hands up and not pressing over. We want to make sure that you're really pressing at the top of the block, being disciplined and controlled, and then coming back down, not just throwing your hands up there for the sake of it. After you've been able to balance on the Bosu ball without a ball and just focusing on being stable, what we do with our athletes is then incorporate the actual ball. You can play pepper, you can volley back and forth. So that makes you focus on something else while you're balancing. So Emily and I will try and demo this.